Hello everyone, I welcome you to the second lecture on the poem written by Samuel Johnson, London, a poem in the imitation of the third satire of Juvenal. In my last lecture, I had discussed how Thales had decided to leave London because of the existent corruption that was present in the city, and he wanted to travel to a land which was free from the squalor and poverty that he witnessed in London, the corruption and degeneration of morality that was present in the city. So he decides to go to Wales, a place which was far away from London, seeking better life. So let's continue from line number 30 onwards. So, in the last couple of lines, Thales was talking about how he had decided to leave the city of London in order to look for better places to live, and the place that he had decided on was Wales or Cambria, and that is where he was going to go. Line number 30 reads and says, "Our English honour grew a standing jest." Just in the last line, we had talked about how there was the growing degree of corruption present in the city of London. The government was completely against the people, and it only believed in exploitation and filling their own coffers with unjustified taxes, and excises were levied upon these people. These heavy unjustified taxes were levied upon the people, which was nothing less than a burden to them. The poet says that, or he probably feels that the English honour had become a joke, a jest. Jest is a joke under the current government and the policies that the government had come up with. And these are some of the reasons which prompted Thales to make the decision of leaving the city of London. Line number 31 onwards reads, "A transient calm the happy scenes bestow, and for a moment lull the sense of woe. At length awaking with contemptuous frown, indignant Thales eyes the neighbouring town." Now we know that Thales is standing on the bank of the river Thames, and he's waiting for his ride to arrive so that he can move out from the city of London. And the poet says that Thales feels, or he observes, a transient calm coming over him. As he watches London, he is lost in a transient calm, and the scenes around him provide a kind of happiness. For a moment, just for a moment, the scene or his surroundings, it lull his sense of woe, or it tricks him into feeling a kind of safety in the environment that he was present in. But that is only for a very short period of time, because Thales at once awakens and brings himself back into reality. And the poet writes, "At length awaking with contemptuous frown." The scene or the place where Thales was standing was very peaceful at that time of the day, but he does not let it fool him into thinking that London had become a safe place, and he contemptuously frowns at the city. Indignant Thales eyes the neighboring town. He wants to move out from the city of London into the next place, or into the city of Wales, where he could feel better and feel safer. Line number 35 onwards, Thales describes the problems of London, so we'll just go through it once. "Since worth," he cries, "in these degenerate days, wants even the cheap reward of empty praise. In those cursed worlds devote to vice and gain, since unrewarded science toils in vain. Since hope but soothes to double my distress, and every moment leaves my little less, while yet my steady steps no staff sustains, and life, still vigorous, revels in my veins. Grant me, kind heaven, to find some happier place, where honesty and sense are no disgrace." He's praying to the heavens. "Some pleasing bank where verdant osiers play, some peaceful vale with mature paintings gay, where once the harassed Briton found repose, and safe in poverty defy his foes. Some secret cell ye powers indulgent give. So we find Thales angrily crying out his grief and the troubles and the problems that he had faced in London. Thales almost prays to kind heaven to give him a happier place where honesty and sense would not be considered to be a disgrace but would be considered to be things which need to be appreciated, which was currently lacking in London. So let's go through what he says or what are the various problems that he had faced. He calls London and the days that he had spent in London as degenerate days, days which were not productive or useful at all. He did not grow and develop and flourish over there. It was a city which exploited the poor, and it only favored the rich. Since worth he cries in these degenerate days, wants even the cheap reward of empty praise. What he says is that unworthy people are rewarded, but the virtuous are punished. In those cursed walls devote to vice and gain, since unrewarded science toils in vain, laziness is rewarded, unworthiness is rewarded. Whereas those people who put in their hard work, put in their toil and labor, are not appreciated at all. The walls around the city are cursed. They are only devoted to vice and they are only devoted to gain, people with money, people with influence and wealth. Since unrewarded science toils in vain, learning has no value, learning has no worth. Scientists work hard, but it's all in vain because they are not appreciated. Learning is disregarded and ignored, and other vices are given more importance to. Since hope but soothes to double my distress, and every moment leaves my little less. Thales has hopes for a new world, but at the same time, he becomes disappointed when he sees the state of affairs. Actually, he was almost bereft of hope. He did not have any hope left because he was continually being deprived of his possessions. Every moment leaves my little less. Things were being taken away from him. While yet my steady steps no staff sustains, he does not have any support, and life still vigorous revels in my veins. Grant me, kind heaven, to find some happier place. So still there is life present in him. He literally begs to the kinder heavens, to kind heaven, to find him some happier place. He was completely done with London. He did not want to live in the city, which only favored corruption, corrupt people, which only favored vices, and virtue and learning and honor were disregarded and not given much importance. So he prays to the kind heaven to give him a happier place. What kind of place is he expecting? Where honesty and sense are no disgrace. Underline this. So he wants to go to a place where honesty is rewarded instead of corruption, where honesty is not considered to be a disgrace but is considered to be something important to uphold in one's own life. He wants to go to some pleasing bank, a bank which is pleasing, where verdant osiers play. Now, verdant osiers actually refers to fields which are covered with willow trees, where there is greenery around. Some peaceful vale refers to valley, with mature paintings gay, some valley which is worthy of being painted in a painting. So he wants to go to greener pastures. He wants to go to a valley which is painted with natural scenes and natural beauty, where once the harassed Briton found repose and safe in poverty defy his foes. Some secret cell ye powers indulgent give. Now, when he is talking of a place where harassed Britain referring to people of um Britain, ancient Britons, they had found repose meaning safety, protection, or tranquility. Now, in older times, the ancient Britons they had retreated to Wales. So he's talking about the place of Wales, that the ancient Britain had gone to Wales when their enemies, who were the enemies of the Britons, they were two groups of people called as the Saxons and other Germanic tribes who had invaded England. So when England was invaded by his enemies, these ancient Britons had found peace and tranquility and protection in the land of Wales. So this is where he wants to go to. This is what he means by saying that he wants to go to a place which is full of natural beauty, and the place which once the ancient Britons had gone to in order to seek protection and safety. Line number 50 reads, let Dash live here, for Dash has learned to live. Now, these blanks may be filled with the names of anyone who has learned to live in London, as Thales proudly states that he does not want to or has not been able to live in the depraved London that symbolizes national vice and shame. Actually, the dash can also refer to George II, and it is actually a kind of barbed attack, kind of hidden attack on George II, that let Dash live here. So let George II live there, and for Dash has learned to live because they have no problem to live in the corrupted city of London, which is full of vices and which is full of shame. So it's a kind of a barbed attack. It's a kind of a sly hidden attack on George II. He continues and says, here let those reign whom pensions can incite to vote a patriot black, a courtier white, explain their country's dear bought rights away, and plead for pirates in the face of day. With slavish tenets taint our poisoned youth, and lend a lie the confidence of truth. When he says, here let those reign, let those people be in power, whom pensions can incite. Pensions over here refers to bribes which were given for political support. So people used to sell their soul and their morality for a little amount of money, and they used to live on pensions, and on the basis of pensions they decided whom to support on the political front. Now, this over here is a kind of a commentary on the political situation of the land. And when we talk about pensions, what had happened was that Walpole was accused, and not without reason, of having corrupted public life by putting members of parliament or MPs on the government payroll through appointments to be the recipient of award of pensions. So he basically bought member of parliaments. And the word that you see over here, to vote a patriot black, a courtier white. Now patriots were opponents of Walpole, whereas the courtiers were supporters of the king's chief minister. Now, all these Whigs, they opposed absolute monarchy. They opposed absolute monarchy, and the Tories supported monarchy. Now, what Walpole did was that he paid people in order to earn their support. Walpole was a Whig, and with money, he could make a person to be a villain and all his supporters to be a person of great moral standing. Now, the Patriots' opposition claimed that Walpole had betrayed the Whig legacy of popular rights, which was enshrined in the Magna Carta and Bill of Rights, and instead of speaking for his own people, he used to speak for those that were actually hurting the Britishers. What it says over here is that explain the country's dear bought rights away. He had given away his own sense of morality, and he was working in the hands of those people with wealth and power, and not working for the people who had put him in that position, and plead for pirates in the face of day. Who are these pirates? These pirates are actually being referred to the Spaniards or the Spanish people. Now, what these Spanish people were trying to do was that the Spanish people were trying to control the British ships, and they were putting in lots of unnecessary checks. But Walpole, he tried to defend these invasions of these Spaniards in the parliament. So the Spanish attacks on British interests or ships were defended in the parliament, which was completely an example of corruption that was present. So this is why the poet says that the people who are in power, they were pleading for pirates in the face of the day. In broad daylight, they were defending Spaniards, or they were defending the Spanish people who were putting in checks on the British interests. The last two lines says, with slavish tenets taint our poisoned youth, and lend a lie the confidence of truth. So Walpole, what he tried to do was that he tried to lie with such confidence that the lie appeared to be almost as the truth. Instead of standing for the British interest, he was working for the Spanish interests, and that had what had poisoned the youth. The government did not serve the people, but the government was serving their own interests, and they were working for filling in their own coffers and money. Line number 57 onwards reads, let such raise palaces and manors buy, collect a tax or farm a lottery, with wobbling eunuchs fill a licensed stage, and lull to servitude a thoughtless age. Now, there are lots of references in these four lines. Thales wants to bring to notice about the various corrupt practices that were present in London. Now, tax collecting and farming a lottery, meaning that there was a fixed amount that was paid to the government in order to conduct lottery, and keeping the proceeds, like this was a very profitable activity. In 1694, the state lotteries flourished a lot, and the government had authorized these private schemes because it was benefiting the government. Now, the opponents of the government actually argued that these immoral operators, they used them in order to get money, extract money, or milk money from gullible people, or those people who used to become foolish easily, or naive people. So, this collection of taxes, this tax collecting and farming of lotteries, this was something that was completely beneficial to the government, and that is why the government had given permissions to run these lotteries to private players, and they were openly exploiting the public. So, the city of London had become a place which were filled with such kind of places and manners running these lotteries. He also talks about wobbling eunuchs filled a licensed stage. Now, I have discussed this earlier as well, that there was a Stage Licensing Act which was passed in 1737. And that Stage Licensing Act was actually a kind of censorship on dissent against the government. What that act was, that the act had been made so that it could silence satire or any kind of attack that was made on Walpole's government. So that silenced stage and all the act that had been scheduled on the silent stage, it was replaced or it was filled in by wobbling eunuchs. Who are these wobbling eunuchs? Wobbling eunuchs refers to castrati. Castrati are male sopranos who sing. These who sing in Italian opera, which was very fashionable in London at that point of time. But these Italian opera or these male sopranos, these male singers, they questioned the manly British vigor on stage. So they openly insulted the Britishers, and they had taken the space of satire or attack that was made on the government. I'll simplify it a bit. Wobbling eunuchs fill a licensed stage. Licensed stage refers to the silent stage. All acts or all pieces of performances which were an attack on the government or a satire on the government or the working policies of the government, it was replaced by these wobbling eunuchs or these Italian opera, and these male sopranos or these men they use to openly insult or question the manly British figure, which was quite insulting. So, this is something which is not being appreciated by Thales, and he points out one of the things which London had reduced down to. He further continues and says, and lull to servitude a thoughtless age. It was all being done in order to lull to servitude, convert people into servitude or into slave. And the age itself had turned into a thoughtless age in which learning was not appreciated, any kind of dissent was not appreciated. So, this is what Thales resents. These are some of the reasons which Thales finds offending and become the cause for his travel from London to Wales. I'll end this lecture over here for today. We'll continue this in the next session. Thank you.